let's talk about facial recognition and how courts are admitting facial recognition where there's a hidden algorithm as to how it works. They're arresting people based on facial recognition.
It's not working perfectly
and
yet.
convicting them for crimes based on facial recognition algorithms that are not.
Is that happening
Yes,
yet?
that is happening.
Well, that needs to stop, to be honest, because that's bullshit.
There it needs to stop.
I think the moment that AI can get emotions, how do you control it?
Right. So how do you control it?
That's the $64,000 question. Can it get out of control before it has feelings or not? Here we are, Business Untitled episode. We don't know what episode, but we're here trying to get some momentum back. It's mid-February, and lots going on in the world. Actually, the world feels, both wildly exciting and wildly chaotic. Mel, how you feeling?
Tired. But I'm on my fourth espresso shot today, so I'm either going to die right after this or I'm going to have energy for the rest of the day. But what I will say is that I think we're now on episode 50, whatever, but somewhere in the 50s. And Dave made a good point. Long after we're all dead, hopefully that's 100 years from now, we as best friends have footage for the rest of our lives, for our kids to watch of how much.
Maybe our kids are watching, maybe our grandkids, but our great-grandkids.
Somebody will watch it. Like, this is the guy, Mike Novogratz, that started it all.
You know what's so funny? There's a bunch of memes that went around on this. They were like, you die, and 2 weeks later, people forget you, and your clothes get passed on to other people, and then a few years later, your house is lived by other people, and your kids remember, your grandkids remember you, but your you don't remember your great grandfather, nor do I. I've heard a couple stories about him, and
he also wasn't Mike Novogratz.
Then you're just dust in the wind, baby.
We're all going to be Rockefeller remembers.
We're all going to be dust in the wind.
Rockefeller's great grandkids remember him.
Yeah. Well, you know why? Because people remember stories. They remember narratives, right? And so this is storytelling.
So I was just about to say, so what are we creating?
So a
library of stories.
Well, it's a library of stories, and the reason people remember Rockefeller, right? Of course, he was very successful, but it's also the lure around him, the story, right? It's like he's emblematic of like the American dream at this point in time. This guy that showed up in Pennsylvania.
No one talks about Henry Flagler, Rockefeller's partner, who was just as rich, who then built basically the railroad to Florida, created actually, Miami and
I've never even heard of this guy.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you have though. You've probably heard of him. He
what is his
famously
name?
created the train down to Miami.
Flagler.
All the way to Key West at one point, and then the hurricane.
Was he as rich as Rockefeller?
At one point,
or just about.
I mean, it was his partner. Right?
But again, Rockefeller has all the narrative, right? Everybody knows Rockefeller. Maybe 1 out of 100 people know Flagler.
But there's also things that help, like all the staple things he built with his name. Then with culture, there was this huge label you might have heard of called Rockefeller Records. And that's when the black community really, really understood who Rockefeller Records was owned by Jay-Z. And
different spelling.
Yeah.
Different spelling, but it was meant to say we're as rich as Rockefeller.
Why did he name it Rockefeller?
After Rockefeller.
Right, because it represented to him the epitome of wealth creation.
When I was in 4th or 5th grade, I wrote a paper. I was like, about John D. Rockefeller. It was the first time I understood like what rich people like really were, and I was like fascinated about the robber barons, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Carnegie. But it started off all about John D. Rockefeller. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, you know what I think? It to me, I'm going to jump up into a point on that, which is like narratives and stories are so important to the human condition, right? And yet we're going to talk about AI later, which is just information networks, information overload, right? And it's like even this little discussion about how humans organize around stories, around myths, it's what makes us human at the end of the day, right? Is this ability to believe in myths bigger than ourselves, right? Whether it's Rockefeller or the US dollar or anything else like that. And when you look at like information networks, artificial intelligence, which is really like the harnessing in a sense at a very quick speed of information networks for intelligence purposes, and we can talk about what intelligence is versus consciousness, but it starts with like, we're all just talking about stories basically, right? And we don't remember lists and, facts. We remember
Talking
like
about
stories.
stories and
Yeah.
facts, I want to ask something completely unrelated, but kind of related. But I always wanted to know this as a kid, and I never thought I'd be sitting in a room with two extremely educated men that may know everything. Not everything, but a lot about everything. So, and I know all my guys here knows this. So, when did Rockefeller die? Roughly,
John,
you don't even have
the
to.
original, he probably died, I'm going to say 60s?
No.
40s?
John D. Rockefeller probably died 1930.
Was it that long
Somebody
ago?
Google it.
I think
Google it.
he started, he was probably born in 1865, I think.
1937.
Okay.
When did the HIV virus come about?
1980s.
80,
So there's no way it
83.
was around at that time, right?
No.
No, yeah.
Okay, because when Nas and Jay-Z, here's a fun hip-hop fact. When Nas and Jay-Z was battling, and you guys should remember this, Ether, you guys remember this? There was a famous line that went on, and everybody was like, whoa, we didn't know that. Nas said to Jay-Z, he said, Rockefeller died of AIDS. That was the end of his chapter. And that's the guy you choose to name your company after. I put it together. Y'all rock hoes. Y'all rock fellas. I rock hoes. Something. You remember that line? But the whole hip-hop community was like, shit, Rockefeller died of AIDS?
So stories and narrative aren't always true.
Yeah, well, that's another
know,
point, which is like more information does not equal truth.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, at
and
the
I
end of the
always
day.
wanted to know
That's
if
crazy.
that was
No, it was not
true.
true. Johnny Rockefeller,
not
what was
true.
true about him is he wore a wig.
Really?
Yeah, he was bald, he wore a wig. And you always see him, he's got a very angular face. He always has this gray wig on, and I always thought it was his hair.
So I sent you something about Rockefeller. Rockefeller said that he basically died from stress. He stressed himself becoming the most wealthy man. And I think was it Vanderbilt? It was like, look, I made so much money, I'm not going to work more than 2 hours a day. And he was not stressed out at all from what he said. So I don't know if that's true. But enough about Rockefeller. Chiltern Firehouse, which I didn't get a chance to go to yet because it's going to come back around, had a devastating fire that's going to shut it down for about a year
More,
or
probably.
maybe
Probably
more.
Probably more.
Yeah, no, it had a fire last Friday. It was devastating. Good news. Mike and I are, of course, investors. in
Yeah, you
that
guys
and
just
have-
went to the
have
10-year
lived
anniversary,
that,
right?
Just went to the 10-year anniversary. It's an amazing, amazing property and community. It's the good news is nobody got hurt, nobody
Thank
got
God.
injured, thank God. And the facade and the main facade is still intact. And so while there's going to be a lot of damage and a lot of rebuilding, it's going to be
It's still a
rebuilt.
firehouse.
It's still a firehouse,
Which is the
and
ironic.
it will come back stronger than ever.
I never been, but every single person I have met from London, rich, poor, middle class, white, black, ghetto, not ghetto, they know of this place and say the same. I was sitting with a guy maybe 2 weeks ago that's worth $15 billion. And he was like, man, that place is so, he's like, I worked my way at that door for 2 years.
It's a hard door.
To be able to get in. And he was like, I will not mess that up for anyone. So as rich as this guy is, and the good thing he said, it's not a membership club.
No.
So when you get in there, whether you're worth $5 or $15 billion, everyone is on the same level and you talk and you have fun and like, it's not like as secluded as a membership house. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's not. It's really about like a set of values. If I had to explain that right, it's a community created around a set of values. It's it's beautiful design, it's beautiful uniforms, it's great food, it's all those things. But there's something about Chiltern that everybody has this same kind of set of values for that night. And so it creates a community. So what I think is this kind of most tragic thing about the fire is just that, there's people that have worked there since it opened, right? Like lots of people. Like
wow.
When I go in there, it's like family. You say hi to this person, hi to that person. They've been there a long time. Now that all disperses and you have to put it back together. So it's like an opportunity, but it's sad in that way. It's kind of was a moment in time and now it's dispersed.
Yeah, Andre Balazs, who really is the heart and soul of the thing, built it. He caters space Like he curates space, creates atmosphere better than anybody on the planet. Just period.
But I think the way he creates the atmosphere, having worked with him for a long period of time, is there's the design element to it. There's the behavior element. And again, when you're talking about like in a business, having the staff, the people that work there express the values of what makes this place special, right? That's the continuity that's so amazing there. And so even it's so strong that the guests take on those same set of values. And so it's like when you're at the Chiltern Firehouse,
you gotta be
behave.
cool.
Yeah. You don't behave, but you behave. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're respectful of other people, but you can be free. You know what I'm saying? At that same time, there's no rules, but there are rules.
So it's not. Is it like, because what the guy was explaining, it's not like a Zero or Casa where you have to kind of sit in that corner with your people and don't dare walk over to this table and talk to. Like everyone talks. Everyone's just excited that they got in. So everyone's just like friends at that point.
There's a cool restaurant. There's a great outdoor space. There's a cool bar called the Ladder Shed. That's where like kind of the vibe happens late night with the DJ. Beautiful art. You know, got to be Theaster Gates. Hope that didn't get damaged.
I think also one of the problems with membership clubs, right, is that there's an entitlement that starts to come with that because it's like, oh, I paid my money, I'm a member here, so now I'm entitled, right? In the case of, say, Chiltern, which is not a membership club, just to break that down, you know, you're paying money like everybody else, but you're in that room, which is a very hard, you know, kind of curated room, because of like how you're behaving, how you're contributing, I would even go to say. And I think what gets lost in membership clubs, frankly, is this aspect of like contributing to it. It's a little bit like, oh, I got this membership, so I can do what I want here.
Yeah, very true.
Hey, before we get to AI, let's give a shout out to Larry Morrow, who's been one of our guests. Mel and I went down to the Super Bowl. That's when we first met at the Super Bowl, so it was kind of like our anniversary.
You guys hook up?
And my two brothers, the same four. And Larry popped off for 3 nights. He opened up a spot, Empire, made it his own for those 3 nights. And, you know, Travis Scott showed up, Little Baby.
Everybody,
it just
Cardi
became
B,
Meek. It became the place to be if you're certainly in hip hop, or you're a white guy that dresses like he wants to be in hip hop.
Meek pulled me aside that night. If you on the internet, you know me and Meek have some history, but we buried it. Shout out to Meek. But first thing he said was, "Damn, Mel, you got Mike Novo standing on in the club on the couch." And we looked over at him, and he was going, "Yeah," on the couch. And we both just laughed. So it was fun. I hate that you missed that weekend. That was a really, really, really
but Larry,
good weekend.
I mean, just talk about being an entrepreneur, right? You got the Super Bowl coming. You're like, okay, how do I keep my brand growing and do something big? It's hard to compete in the Super Bowl. You got the Fanatics party. You got the Sports Illustrated party. Everyone's throwing a party. FanDuel's having a party, you know, all of them.
To be fair, Larry Party was better than Sports Illustrated. We left Sports Illustrated and went to Larry Party.
That's what I said. It takes courage to compete. You got to stand up, and you got to do something that people want to come to. And he pulled it off. So shout out for Larry.
Shout out to Larry.
AI.
Let's do it. Let's talk about AI.
Wait, talking about AI.
Yeah.
Elon Musk over the weekend said that he's releasing the greatest, smartest AI there is today.
It's
Did
a
it
battle.
happen?
I haven't paid attention in the last few hours, but
Grok 3.
Grok 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a huge competition going on in the world.
Sam Altman said, "Hey, we're real close to doing ChatGPT 4.5 and then 5." Yeah. I used ChatGPT Deep Research this weekend. Oh my goodness, it's just a lot better than ChatGPT on subjects.
Is it better than Perplexity?
They're all versions. Perplexity uses ChatGPT.
Dave has a name for Perplexity for you, and probably me at this point too, the Oracle.
Well, you do. You treat it like it's the Oracle, and it's infallible, but it's in fact not infallible at all. It makes mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
What's so interesting?
It's getting better though.
What's so interesting is how
better.
fast it's getting better. Because I've been using it on one thing in particular, and we used the Deep Research, and it almost got it perfect. The growth in how good it is, the acceleration in that growth, gets me to think 2 to 3 years from now, 2 to 3 years from now, our minds are going to be blown.
Well, I want to step back
Yeah,
with,
let's
with
step back a
AI
little
for a
bit.
second, because I think it's one of the most important, if not, it probably is the most important issue of our time right now.
By a long shot.
And I think it's important
Certainly in
to
business.
in business and in the world, right? And there's a lot of pieces to it, but I think we've had this conversation. But one thing, first of all, is like even talking about the difference between intelligence or general intelligence and consciousness, right? Because they're different things. And I'm gonna just define for 1 second what intelligence is generally defined as, right?
Yeah.
Which is intelligence is the ability to take actions to achieve an objective, basically, right? So whether it's like humans, hunting and gathering for food, or whatever other mission you're on, right? It's like action for result, and then consciousness is really equal,
sentience.
or sentience. Sentience, consciousness is equal to subjective feeling, like I feel something.
So that people talk about these two things. AGI, right, is the first thing they talk about. And that, people think Sam Altman's saying 3 to 10 years, 3 to 5 years, that's closer than people think.
To 3 to 10 years for what?
To get AGI. What AGI means is the AI will be as good as a human at
Every
Wouldn't
episode.
be a
Wouldn't be a
podcast.
business
I thought I turned
untitled
it off.
episode
I
without
I
it.
turned it off. My other phone is gone because I had the ringer off.
But stick with intelligence versus sentient.
Yeah, that's intelligent. Sentience, people think 15 years, maybe never.
What's sentience?
Sentience is it feels.
When you explain that to me, when you say it feels, what does that mean?
You're angry at someone.
So that's like a robot.
It's also it's also like a subjective feeling, right? It's something that only you as Mel feel this thing, right? It's not like you can't describe, right? Let me just break this down for 1 second. We're all made up of atoms. We're all made up of molecules, right? There's like the ability of the brain to like store and process information, mathematics, for instance, right? 2 + 2 = 4. Computer can do that same thing, right? But you feeling a way, like you wake up and you're depressed. Like
So
computers don't get depressed.
Is that saying that you hook yourself up, or you have an AI, let's say Perplexity 20, you have it in your hand and you say, Perplexity, make me angry.
No, I'm saying, I'm saying something else. I'm saying that
that Perplexity itself
would have
is
to be
angry.
angry.
Wait, what?
So that's what I'm saying, right? So in the artificial intelligence
Well, why would we even want that? Why would anyone work on that?
Well, okay, that's one of the big ethical questions around AI and where it's going. But it's important to understand first, I think, really, truly important to understand there's like intelligence processing, right? Actions for a goal. And then there's like this concept of like, does artificial intelligence, non-biological intelligence ever get feelings, ever become sentient, conscious, right? And that's something that's much less understood.
Because
Well, I
we
think
don't,
the moment-
we don't even understand how humans feel that way.
Right.
I think the moment that AI can get emotions, feelings of any kind, it becomes a real problem, right? Because when you get angry, or you or myself, sometimes you may react, and you may overreact. You may do something. People that murder people, sometimes it's just because they got too angry. So you put AI that has more intelligence than the average human being, or most, at that point, all human beings, to be able to calculate a reaction based on anger, or emotion of any sort. Like, okay, you just made me angry. I'm shutting down your whole fucking house because I control it. Like, why would anyone want that?
Well, I think that's the main ethical question around AI, right? There's two.
And how do you stop it?
Right.
Yeah, how do you? Yeah,
That's the entire question around it, because we know that, technologists would argue that computers make us more efficient, right? We're able to create better drugs, better means of transportation, right? We don't have to do as much labor to get more quality of life, in a sense. And so as long as we're controlling the computers or the technology, you can make the argument that, okay, that's no different than controlling machines, cars, right? Any kind of technology. I think the general existential question around AI is, does it ever start to acquire subjective feelings of its own, right? Does it start to, or even one step back from that, does it get programmed with a goal that at all costs it wants to achieve this goal? So there's like kind of this famous problem, this Nick Bostrom, I think he calls it the paperclip problem, right? The paperclip. And it's basically saying, like, in an AI world, if you basically told the most powerful thing in the universe, your mission is to create as many paperclips as you want, right? All it would do was take every action in furtherance of that goal. And so before you know it, every resource in the world would be dedicated, for instance, to creating paperclips, which we know is like absurd, right? But if you look at social media, if you look at Instagram, for instance, or TikTok, like their main mission is eyeball engagement. So TikTok, and I don't mean to politicize TikTok any differently than Instagram or X for that matter, but their main goal is engagement, and they will do that to the detriment of humans at times, because we all sit here, we talk about anxiety, depression, shootings, all this, like, I just read something today that said Gen Z in English-speaking countries, I think, is least happy than they've ever. Did you see this thing? Yeah, than it's ever been recorded.
Child suicides, child
So there's all this
cuttings,
crazy
all this.
stuff, and anybody can look at that and say, well, maybe social media and the digital, connections in substitution of human connections are a part of that. But that's their goal, and they're really good at achieving it. So you scroll TikTok all the time.
And guess
what's
what's coming with AI?
Wow.
Really soon, right? As we progress, I'll be able to send out a tailored, like, you think about what AGI gives you, I can send out 1 billion tailored messages at the same exact time to try to change your mind and your mind, knowing who you are and you are. So instead of one message that I hope goes viral, I'm going to send out 1 billion messages, different, one to Mel, one to Dave, one to every person in this room. Like, the power that's coming is so scary.
Right. Well, to Mike's point, so it gives you this ability to like manipulate each person individually, right? At a vast level. And who's controlling that? Well, either some government or billionaire, right, is controlling that, or we lose control of the system at some point in time and it's actually controlling itself, or it's so opaque that nobody actually knows who or what is controlling it, right? There's unintended consequences. Like, I would argue that, like, a lot of this anxiety, depression, these kind of things are unintended consequences of TikTok scrolling. I get it. That's not the only reason. There's a lot of things. There's things like to think about, like regulatory capture, right? Like pharma industry, agricultural industry. We talk about why everybody's obese in this country, right? Because the regulations have been captive of the big producers of agriculture, and therefore human, our actually citizens' health is not being prioritized over corporate profits in that context. So you can see this world getting really warped in an AI
and listen,
scenario.
and so when you think about AI for drug discovery, it's gonna literally know you and know to discover drugs for you. And so, like, in an AI future, you think you're going to cure most things, and when you talk to the AI people that are focusing on that, that's the most optimistic, use case almost. But as Dave said, like, think about it in social media, it's a disaster.
Yeah. And we're not even on consciousness yet. These are all discussions simply around, like, intelligence, you know what I'm saying?
And
Like a giant network that operates very fast.
In lots of ways, you don't need to go on consciousness yet, because it's the best I read, it's 15, 20, 30 years away. Like, you need to think about it, but it's the more practical piece. And then after that is a thing called the singularity, which is where you just lose your mind, because where one night it's smarter than everything, and the next night it's 100 times, 1,000 times, 100. It just becomes so smart, and you don't know what. It's just there's so much uncertainty around that. It's terrorizing.
But honestly, that's why I'm from what I know about it, that's why I'm so, like, such a believer in Neurolink, because I believe what you guys are saying is kind of like almost inevitable. Like, it's gonna happen. and this thing is going to become I mean, it's smarter than most of us now, but when you get into AI, when you get into that level of things, like who's going to keep up with, who's going to be able to outthink AI?
But when you
right?
say it's smarter than most of us now, what do you mean?
Like just with information, AI has more
It has
information.
more information, but Google has more informational retrieval than you do
But
right
Google
now.
is still a computer,
What?
right? Google is a computer.
But AI is too.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm talking about the basic human, Mike, Mel, Dave. AI has more information than
Yeah.
us. So now when you get into other things, how do you keep up with AI? And I do
You
believe
use
that
it. You don't keep up with it. You use it.
you use it, but what you're saying is that at some point, like, how do you control it, right? At some point, it gets
Right, how
so
do you
smart
control
that it gets out of control.
Well, that's
So I
that's-
do believe
again. That's the $64,000 question. Can it get out of control before it has feelings or not?
Right.
yes, but Neurolink. If Neurolink is hooked up to Mike Novogratz, and Neurolink makes you as smart or smarter than AI, do you not think that's
I think-
helpful?
no.
Well,
Why?
no, it's. I think you're looking at that a little backwards too, because that could just as easily be fed by an AI network that had vast powers but was not truly understood. Right. I think the problem I'm getting at with this, or why I wanted to frame it, is because there's like intelligence in a way of like execution, right? And it may you give it a goal, it's going to be extremely effective at executing that. It's an extremely complex world. That's the paperclip problem. And so it's like, how do we put regulations or guardrails in place? And that's what everybody's debating right now, is like, how do you create something where people can still innovate in AI and use it for what's beneficial, but not let it jump outside that box?
You saw the thing I sent you on music.
Yeah, I
Which
was
is
just
great
about
music,
to touch
which you
on
said
that.
this guy monitors every song and what songs catch and what songs don't catch.
Yep.
And, what percentage of new songs actually, touch people enough that they actually get
Care
traction.
about the artist.
What?
Yeah.
Care about it. It's only 10% of songs that people actually care about the artist. The other 90% of songs is
Don't
just
make it.
a song that they like and love, and hear the music, has no idea that.
And he
you
said
know.
AI is already almost halfway there. And he said in 3 years, there's no chance that we're not going to get most of our music from AI.
Right. Yeah.
They're doing a better job than everybody but Kanye.
Yeah. Well, you know why that, right? If you think about that, right? I'm going to talk about that for a second, but we think of creativity as simply a human thing, right? Like only humans can be creative, right? But if you break down creativity, it's really the ability to recognize a pattern and then to spring outside and change that pattern. That's what creativity is, right? It's like, you're basically like, you need to know music before you can like create really cool music. You can't just bang on a computer, right? Like Mike and I, right? Without knowing how to play piano and create music. So you need to first understand the structure, then you break out. If pattern recognition is best done by AI, because that's what it's actually super at, right? Then what's gonna tell you that pattern recognition with breaking out of it isn't going to be something they're going to be really good at? They're going to break out of it billions of times per second, per minute, until they find one that hits more than any else. And by the way, it may be a different song for you than it is for you, than it is for you, right?
But see, that's where it gets really, really scary, right?
Every once in a while, I wake up and think,
Oh,
Go ahead.
thanks. Appreciate that. This is where it gets really, really tricky, right? Because if Travis Scott does a song, right? You know it's Travis Scott. There's so many revenue streams that come out of that one Travis Scott hit. There's the live performance aspect. So then there's all those people who are hired to put together this Travis Scott show. There's a merch. There's a brand behind Travis Scott that all stems from one hit record or 10 hit records. So if you're no longer listening to music for Travis Scott, right? Let's just say 90% of the music is produced by AI. Then there's not that live aspect of it. There's not that merch aspect of it. There's all those other jobs that come with the brand of Travis Scott, which is thousands of people unemployed. Which brings me to, I was thinking, I employ about 900 plus people at my restaurants, right? And they've been talking about robotics and so on and so forth. And I'm like, wow, it would be nice for my overhead to not be, whatever,
30%.
yeah, whatever it is a
30%.
month. I'm not gonna fire anybody at Bojangles. We're light years away from that. But what I'm saying is, I was thinking about it. If it did happen tomorrow, and 70% of those employees, maybe even 80, are people who work the kitchen, people who actually do manual labor. And if I could replace that with a computer or an AI robot, can you just wait? Replace that. So I now eliminate, out of those 900 people, I eliminate 700 people. Sounds great for me, right? Because I no longer have to pay 30%. But then if I do that, Wendy's do that, Bojangles overall do that, every other QSR franchise does that. So the cost of labor goes down to 5%, if that much. But then I'm thinking about it just myself. I didn't have this conversation with them. And I'm like, wait a minute. The people that buy my food are Wendy's employees, are Popeye's employees, are other employees who live a middle-class lifestyle or a working class. I'm like, does that actually help me if thousands and thousands and thousands of people are laid off? Who's going to buy my food?
So what I would tell you is it's already happening. Like, don't be naive. Like, the drive-throughs are all going to AI drive-throughs. They're more efficient. They do it better. And so if you look at the amount of people in a quick-serve restaurant per sales, it's going straight down, right? They're being replaced by more automated cooking facilities. And so you now run your stores, if you're McDonald's, with less employees than you did 5 years ago.
No, but what I'm saying is those employees.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, your
So
point's
I understand what you're saying.
Who's
Listen.
gonna like?
No, my only point was it's already happening. And
So-
it's going to accelerate.
So, but here's what's interesting, right? Because, okay, so we're identifying one of the criticisms around AI or around, digitalization, whatever, robotization, any of these things. It's happening already, yet unemployment is still at like all-time lows, right? You know
Yeah,
what I'm
but
saying?
that's for now, right?
Well, it is, but I'm saying it's been happening. So, like, the other side of the equation and what, like, technologists would argue is like, well, everybody's been saying this for 100 years. They've been saying when the factory invents something that stamps cars and, Amazon warehouses, right? All these
Yeah.
things have happened where there's far fewer people in a warehouse today or unloading the ports today than there were 10 years ago, let alone 50 years ago. But yet everybody's got jobs. So how do you explain that, right? So the other
Yeah,
side
how
of that
do
equation,
you explain that?
because new jobs get created. So
I do think that more so than the Bojangles workers, the guys that literally are going to get squeezed are lawyers, accountants,
right,
high-level workers
architects.
who do rote things. Like I've been using AI in some of this legal stuff recently. It is shocking how fast it's iterating and how good it's getting. And you're like,
So
you could see in 3 years. Goldman Sachs already said of their prospectuses, 90% they're using AI and they're just doing the last 10% for companies they take public.
yeah, but what's really interesting in that, right? So there's all these little, right? So I'm going to go on that. I'm going to say, well, now Mike's treating it like the Oracle, and so you think
No.
because there's a part of being a lawyer is the ethics and the ethical training and the philosophical training around it.
I don't
right?
think you're going to get rid of all lawyers, but you're going to get rid of so much of the grunt work that lawyers do.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but even at the lowest level, I mean, look, there's grunt work, but there's also a lot of little tiny things that go into every case, and like, there's effectiveness, but also you have to put like ethics are nowhere a part of that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, but sorry.
Well, what I'm trying to say is it's really tempting to treat this stuff as an oracle. Like I go on this all the time, but yet not only is Perplexity often often factually wrong. I mean, so many times but that's going to be improved, right? When I say factually wrong, I mean, like, I'll ask it, like, how many 30-point LeBron games happened this season, and it'll give me the wrong answer. That has happened to me many, many times. So, but that's a problem of just sorting out and getting the technology better. But then there's other, like, things that have to do with ethics, intersubjective realities, you know, conspiracy theories, things like that, that if you treat this thing like it's all-knowing or like it knows what's what. You know, we once had this conversation, Mike's like, we were talking about like how long a mosquito bite lasts, and he like perplexities it, and he's like a day and a half. And I'm like, well, depends who you are, where you are, what kind of mosquito, what kind of allergies you have, right? So it's just answering it in this incredibly simple way, and the instinct to treat it as an oracle is no different than like treating the Bible or like some doctor in the Middle Ages, like put leeches on this, cut half your finger off, and you're going to be cured.
What I would say is that I do agree with Mike that it's going to happen because, unfortunately, I've paid millions of dollars in legal fees over the last probably 2 years. It's like, what the fuck? And my lawyer is great. He's ethical.
Yeah.
But the most of that bill I paid was just backroom work being done by tons of lawyers that work for him. My bill could have been a tenth of what it is.
You get subpoenaed in any Wall Street case, and they say, we want every email you've ever done. And so before you hand over the emails,
the lawyer,
these are the kind of things the AI can do like that.
Because that's what I think 90% of my bill was.
I agree with all this, 100%. What I'm saying is, like, let's talk about facial recognition and how, for instance, now let's put it in a criminal standpoint. You want to talk about lawyers. Let's talk about facial recognition and how courts are admitting facial recognition where there's a hidden algorithm as to how it works. They're arresting people based on facial recognition.
It's not working perfectly.
And convicting them for crimes based on facial recognition algorithms that are not.
Is that happening yet?
Yes, that is happening.
Well, that needs to stop, to be honest, because that's bullshit.
There it needs to stop.
No, but that's completely.
But Dave,
no.
You're
Wait.
missing the point that we're 2 years into this thing. We're less than 1 year into AI.
I know, but Mike, biases.
I'm saying in 3 to 4 years, this stuff is going to be so much more effective. And I can already see how much.
Both you guys are missing what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that the money that I saw, I factually paid when I went through the bill was not by way of the lawyer that I trusted to be ethical. It was the back end that was being done. So that's not the same as like
yes, it is.
facial recognition. It's not.
It is the same because you won't be able to tell. I can argue for an hour with you on this, and you're not going to tell me where the slope is of what's back office nonsense and what actually has ethical considerations in it. And
well, I think what Mike was saying, if he's subpoenaed or anyone is subpoenaed and you have to produce this, your lawyers have to come up with it. And AI could just do that.
There's a million emails in there, and they give you a broad set of things, and it's going to say anything that has to do with the times or conversations surrounding a subject. That is not a fact. That's an interpretation. Often what you're doing is you're saying, can I go this way or can I go that? Should I include this email or shouldn't I? Okay. And that's getting down to ethics and often, right? And reading.
But one of your big problems with this is it's been wrong so often. And my point is, it's going to get wrong a lot less often.
It's not my big problem, though, because I think that, okay, let me talk about that with facial recognition. There's biases set inside that system. It's much better at identifying white faces than black faces. I agree. Okay, and so that is a bias problem, much more so.
Let me ask you a question: If facial recognition got to 99.99% accurate, would you say, okay, we should use it?
Well, I think it is like 99% accurate, but the problem is
99.99. Like at what level do you say, okay, we're gonna go with facial recognition? And yes, there'll be a mistake once in a while, but like
I think it's a piece of what you bring into the equation, but you still need humans in a sense to like to frame the ethical considerations, because there's a decision there which is like, if you're wrongly convicting 1 out of 1,000 people and sitting them in jail for 10 years, if you're wrong, right? Would you rather only wrongly convict 1 out of 10,000, knowing that you're going to also have false the other way, where you're not going to convict some people that deserved it? And these kind of questions can't be solved.
All right, but wait.
When you go to a police lineup, they get it wrong all the time.
I was just about to say that. Do you know how many black people are sitting in jail because of human error right now,
That's
and it's
true.
not 99.9%. It's probably like 70 or 60%. So as a black man,
Well, so,
I would probably rather, now that you're saying it that way, I'd probably rather take the 99.9% chance that we know is accurate versus the human error.
But you still have the
who
human
has-
error in the equation. You haven't like gone away. You haven't done away with juries.
No, I'm saying if we,
we're just talking about facial recognition.
we're talking about facial recognition.
Self-driving
Guys,
cars.
there's no question
Self-driving
technology
cars.
has good things about it. Like DNA, right? Like DNA sourcing in criminal cases, right, has been really helpful to identify, right, somebody wasn't there, somebody was there. So I am not arguing that all of facial recognition is bad by any. I'm arguing that don't treat it as an oracle.
No, and I
That's
don't.
my argument.
I agree with that fully, but I'm saying if we could get this to a place where it's, and you're saying it is right now, 99.9% right? Yes, there's gonna be fuck ups, and unfortunately, it's gonna be for black people. But right now, there's so many fuck ups by human error for black people, and that's why there's so many guys in jail sitting wrongfully convicted.
No, when you look at Perplexity and you type in, should so-and-so go to jail, and you frame that question, right, you're giving all this over to an opaque algorithm that's framed. You're not going to see what's going in. In fact, you don't see in facial recognition what's going into the back of that. So what I would argue is not that don't do facial recognition. It's like have transparency in the as a requirement in the regulation of AI so that you can see what data sources it's using and what algorithms or weightings it's using, right, to make that decision so that at the end of the day, a human is still involved in that and it's not just like Kafka's nightmare, right, of the trial.
Yeah.
Talk
You know
about
what?
Kafka.
Wait.
What?
Do black people commit most shoplifting crimes in America by facial recognition? This motherfucker says yes.
Black people do not commit most shoplifting crimes in America.
Okay.
According to FBI statistics, in 2019, 69.4% of those arrested for shoplifting were white, while 26.6% were black or African American, and 4% were from other racial groups.
Okay.
However, the use of facial recognition technology in identifying shoplifters has raised concerns about racial bias. Studies have shown that facial recognition systems often misidentify black individuals at higher rates than white individuals, leading to wrongful accusations or arrests. These biases are partly due to overrepresentation.
What? Okay.
Well, you know, it's also, let me just take what you just asked it, because you asked it one very specific question, right? But what it didn't do, for instance, and which is really what the argument about it that you need to defend is it didn't tell you what percentage of the population was black versus white. So what it did is it took an overall...
That was a good one.
Okay, so you basically got a statistic there that wasn't even exactly what you asked it, because what you want to know is the proportion. In other words, there's so many different ways to frame this and to get answers. There's a lot of ethics involved. There's a lot of human lives involved. There's a lot of actual truths involved. Because you know what? When you go to jail, that becomes your truth, right? And if you're convicted wrongly on some sort of intersubjective reality of this brain, your ethical brain that you transfer over to Perplexity, then you're going to live with those
You
consequences.
have to be at least open to the idea that, so having done a lot of criminal justice reform work in the last 7 years, I would say our justice system is broken and flawed in so many ways you can't even count them. So you have to be open to the idea that bringing structure, right, through AI, through some non-subjective but programmed with subjectivity, right? At least assistant.
Yes, agree.
Can make the system better.
Yes.
Now, in the same way, we're going to be very leery to say, all right, let's just everything be self-driving cars, because the first one that crashes, we're going to say, oh shit, a human wouldn't have done that. But at one point, we're going to go to self-driving cars. The question is, and this is not a statement, it's a question. At one point, do we literally go to AI judges? Right,
Yeah,
with the same ideas.
right.
Like, if we
Yeah.
literally learn to trust self-driving cars so much, And
That's
then-
actually scary
Yeah.
for me.
right? Because we're gonna learn this. Like they're
be.
starting the the automatic Teslas in one city. You've got the what are those Waymos?
Yeah, Waymos. Yeah.
Waymos in other cities.
But that brings you back to Dave's point, and I agree with him wholeheartedly on that. Like, you go to AI judges and jurors, sometimes, honestly, and we all know because we've made tons of mistakes, sometimes you just deserve a second, third, fourth, or fifth chance. And that's where morals come in. That's where ethics, that's just where human nature. You may be in front of a judge, and a judge may just look at you and see something in you
Right.
that, you know what, Dave deserves another chance. If you're just going by math calculations,
No, that's a great point.
Yes.
and an AI is
That's
just
right.
like, he did this, the crime equals this, you are fucked.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who have done bad shit has turned a new leaf on their life.
Yeah.
And there's no, if you put it in AI hands,
Yeah.
there's not that emotional
Yeah.
connection.
That's
my,
right.
my sense is it's a long time before we get AI judges, but you could see us getting there, right?
But I
I
think
can
we
see
need
it.
emotion to have AI judges to be
Well,
right.
yeah, I mean, the reason I bring it up in this like hyperbolized scenario of criminals, because everyone now we can plug into it emotionally, right? Because, but even when you think about Google Maps, you know, it's been around for a long time. I don't know, for 10 years. You don't. Nobody knows directions. Nobody. All you do is plug in a thing, and you drive to the end of. You plug that thing in wrong, you're gonna drive off a cliff. You know what I mean? Literally, right? So
You know,
it's no
you're right.
different than with like you give judging humans over. It's the same as Minority Report, right? That famous Tom Cruise movie that was like 15 years ago, where they're basically yeah. Well, but they're also basically like indicting people or convicting people of pre-crimes, right? At that point in time, where it's like
We know you were thinking about committing
we know
a
you were
crime.
thinking about committing a crime and you were about to commit a crime, and so we just arrest you instead because we read your brain, we read your brain chemicals. You're gonna do this. We could tell by your heart rate, by your eye dilation, all these things. And so there's just my point about all this is just it's a really slippery slope.
But we're
and-
heading it.
and we're heading in the direction. So it's important for everybody to understand the risks that are around here and say, this is not to be just left to like, you know, a bunch of government bureaucrats and like
well, it's
Sam,
not
Alt-
right
Sam
now.
Altman and
Now it's but it's being left to a bunch of tech bros
tech bros and
no government bureaucrats at this point.
Well,
like
you
there's
know,
there's almost no regulation on
but
AI at this
if
point.
you think about it, right, there's human ethical considerations, there's real politic considerations, which I would define as like, look, we live in a real world. So competing with China, for instance, right, in this context is important because we're Americans. We want to see this country succeed and we want our values, you know, carried through. And so like with all technologies, if we don't innovate and support and allow, we're going to fall behind, and then we're going to be in that unenviable position that Europe's in right now, where they're like going to settle the war without them even at the table. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's kind of like discounting Europe because they're so behind, you know, from an economic technological standpoint right now, and so they're actually having this existential crisis, saying, okay, we better rethink how we deal with this AI. So I'm saying, like, when we're talking about regulating AI, there's real politics, there's ethics, right? And then there's things around, like, I would say transparency is a big one to me. I think that there needs to be open source requirements in this, like decentralization / transparency. Would you agree with that?
Intuitively, yes. I'm so. It's such a complicated subject. I'm trying to understand it better before I like make the proclamations. My intuition is yes, it should be transparent, and yes, it should be open source. But there are not that many great open source successes.
Even if
in
not
life.
open source transparent, I don't know if they're the same.
And one of the things about
exactly.
transparency, which is interesting, is most of us aren't smart enough to understand what to do with the transparency.
Okay, so do I understand Neurolink wrong? Because what I thought I understood with Neurolink. Can I ask the question?
I was going to explain what Neurolink
Yeah.
was, but yeah,
What was the question?
like you're putting a computer in your brain that makes
Yes,
you like
but I thought
the
at
$6 million
all
man.
times your human brain overpowers the AI part of it, that you almost kind of look at it as a second brain that you control.
Right now, what it's trying to do is help people that are paralyzed get movement, help people that are blind get vision. It's reconnecting. It's putting like a computer to replace part of the brain that's broken.
So when Elon says we need this in order to keep up with AI, what does that mean? Or AI would overpower us? Because I've heard him say that several times.
So right now, you have memory, right? What's the capital of Jamaica?
I'm not from Jamaica.
I'm asking the capital of Jamaica.
I don't. Kingston.
Kingston.
Yeah.
Right, because you learned it at one point. So
Yeah,
you're retrieving that from somewhere in your head, right? Can you imagine a chip that has like all of Google in your head? But the potential to give us enhanced memory, enhanced everything. That's the kind of dream of
It's
Neuralink.
So
kind
how
of two
would that-
different. It's kind of two different things because I understand what you're saying, right? It's basically creating like Neuralink in a sense is starting out from a context of like helping paralyzed people walk again by reconnecting limbs, right, or eyes or things in the
Yeah.
brain. You could take it to another level. Like let's talk about surgeries to like do something necessary, like replace your kidney versus cosmetic surgeries, right?
Yeah.
So Neuralink can easily go into cosmetic superhuman status where you upgrade your Neuralink to like, you know, X or Y, and now you're like getting all of Google in there, right? So but it
I
doesn't
can't remember
really,
anyone's face.
Huh?
I can't remember anyone's face.
But it doesn't really challenge the fundamental assumption that the concept of this AI cloud, that if it escapes and it starts to take action towards goals that don't serve humanity, that wouldn't still control the Neuralink, because it would. Just like Google is controlled by algorithm. Like Google is something where you must pay attention in a sense to what the algorithm is sorting for when you run a business, because if you don't, your business isn't going to make money because you're not going to put the right, you know, keywords in, right? Like, in other words, Google has an algorithm, you don't know what it is, right? But the reality is every business, including this podcast, is trying constantly to figure out how to get the most traction on YouTube or Google, right? So there's a reality to the algorithm that we don't understand that sits behind the network, which we must plug into to be a part of this society.
But here's the thing, right? Like, you don't just, the algorithm, weirdly, I believe, is still controlled by humans, right?
Right now.
Because in order for Business Untitled or any song or anything to get attention from the algorithm, it starts by humans going, and they pick up a certain amount of traction, and then that traction leads to the algorithm playing a part in you being picked up by the algorithm to
Because right
share
now,
it.
the purpose of the algorithm is to maximize eyeball engagement.
Yeah.
So yes, there are humans behind that are basically programming this thing. It's not out of control yet. Right now, those, you know, take Google is controlled by a set of engineers and Zuckerberg at Google. And so, but what its mission is.
No, but that's not what I'm really saying, right? For
I know what you're saying with the algorithm, it gets jump started
yes.
by humans.
Yes.
Right.
No, but
it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. It's just because that's how they set it up.
That's how they set it up now.
Right, because the goal is we want to maximize engagement. So when they see engagement, they respond to it and they push that into it.
How about this? An algorithm, now you have an AI that looks at every last piece of content that got put up on the internet in the last 15 minutes. And it already knows, I want to find the most horrifically violent thing. And it finds that violent thing and it punches it out to everyone, knowing that people love violent things.
Right.
So now no one's looked at it before, it's punched it to everybody.
Right.
That's an algorithm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a good one, but
and,
it's an
and
algorithm.
in fact, they've pulled it back in these like Facebook, you know, so to speak, algorithms, because what it was doing to maximize user engagement, it puts a lot of garbage out there. It puts a lot of like, right, quote, fake news, right, whether, you know, not, but conspiracy theories, right? All these things maximize user engagement. So you see a lot of them. Now, those are human conditions. I'm not going to say conspiracy theories were invented by that, but they're certainly promulgated by it. Hey, I want to ask you another question about it, just as long as we're on it.
Yeah.
What about privacy, right? Because
Privacy is doomed, and I think privacy has been doomed for some time. Like,
you're okay
because
with
of
that?
this.
RIP privacy. I'm not okay with it, but I think
Right, because that's another big thing that, right, like,
I'm not okay with it, but I think we can't avoid it. I think it's
Well,
fucking gone.
Yeah, it's
I
so,
mean,
it's
I
so
think
sad.
that is like if that's your attitude, I think there's
No,
no
I'm just
hope.
saying, how do we avoid it? Because
Well,
as much
you
as
have
you
to put-
think,
you have to
do you
put
think you have
regulations.
privacy right now?
Well, more so than if there was no restrictions whatsoever on privacy. Yes, I do. Like there's
This phone knows everything you do, everywhere you go,
it
everything you talk
knows-
about.
It knows many things. I wouldn't say it nearly knows everything at this
Not
point in
everything,
time.
but would you say 80%?
Yeah, it knows an awful lot. But I'm
Yeah.
saying whatever it knows now is going to be exponentially more. And if we don't regulate it or are not conscious of it and what the ethics around that are, it's going to know your thought before you think it.
So
No, I agree
so
with you. I
this-
just don't see
I
how
saw
we
an ad
stop it.
5 years ago where I could flash it to every single person here and it would tell me who they were. Then I flashed myself and it showed me hundreds and hundreds of pictures, including me at a Knicks game.
Wow.
It scanned the entire internet for any picture
And that
of
was
me
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Wow.
So, like, it's out there now. So imagine,
What's the name of that app?
I forgot the name of the app.
Damn.
And it wasn't available to sell to retail. Like that was a restriction. I can't do this to you.
How did you get it?
The guy who was selling it showed it to me.
I need that.
Imagine for a second that everywhere we walk, there's a camera, right? Every street corner, there's cameras, especially in China, imagine. And now there's a computer that links into all these cameras, right? Unless you have privacy, unless you have, like, you can't link into them. They could
Damn,
literally
that's actually scary.
They could literally
man.
track you everywhere you walk.
Look,
That's
somebody,
what they do in London with CCTV. That's how they
Everywhere.
track crime. Like
No,
they,
but I could go back and say, this is the last 4 years of Mel.
yeah, they do that in London right now with CCTV. They could literally they track you backwards.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think like, what about if somebody invents something that, you just, let's say, wear it. Doesn't have to be a whole mask. Let's just say, I don't want to get into the mask thing, but let's just say you put it on your collar and it puts a force field around you that CCTV can't pick you up.
I'm getting that.
You think that would be legal or illegal?
It'd be illegal.
What?
Should be legal.
They'll make it illegal.
So you think it'd be illegal?
Yeah.
He thinks it should
I don't want it to be illegal. I think they're gonna make it illegal.
These are the decisions societies have to make,
That's what I'm saying.
right? China's already made their decision.
Right.
And what is this?
No
The decision is
privacy.
you give up your privacy to be for the better of the good. It's always been a Chinese ethos. America is like, fuck you, we like privacy,
Yeah.
right? Live free or
Well, we-
die is kind of an American
Yeah.
ideal. And so, again, I say this all the time, but you could install in every single automobile sold in America a little monitor that says every time you drive over the speed limit, it's sending a signal to the cops, and you're going to pay $1 per minute over the speed limit, or whatever the ticket is. Like, the technology's there.
Yep.
We're all Wi-Fi connected.
Yep.
We decide that's not how we do things here. You've got to catch me speeding.
Yeah.
But pretty soon, if you
really-
put up cameras everywhere, well, we're kind of eating into that. You got to catch me speeding. Now you're just
Yeah.
automatically seeing me speeding.
Yeah.
And so where does that idea of freedom, getting caught, or just being monitored?
Right.
It's really complicated.
It is. That's a really good example, actually. But because right now people feel like, yeah, it's okay if a cop catches me. It's even people deal with like the traffic light speed cameras and they're annoyed, but it's not like every single time you were to speed, right? And this is speeding we're talking about. This is not anything particularly moral or ethical. What about practicing your religion? What about, doing something that is
What about being a
considered
closet
taboo?
homosexual
Huh?
and going to a gay club and not knowing anyone?
Are you coming out on the podcast?
I'm not. I'm really
Oh.
not yet. But what about going to a gay
Go
club and not
viral.
wanting your parents or your religion to know? And next thing you know, you're right. Like that, you have the right for that. Like we have our right for privacy.
It is tricky, and I think it's important that everybody thinks around that and starts to frame.
But here's
frame up.
the big thing though. Even as well connected as we all are in this room, what can any of us do about it? Nothing.
It's not true. It's not true. Look at there. People got friends that have run for, office. We've got friends that are on committees. We've got you got to get engaged.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at it this way too. I would say once upon a time when there was a race to build a nuclear bomb, right, in World War II, for our benefit, America won that race. But it was quickly apparent at that point in time how destructive nuclear weapons were if unchecked. And so there's, people made effort, right? There was international agreement to some degree on like how to control nukes. And so that's something you could say about AI as well, right? About some of this stuff is like, let's talk about bigger principles too.
I'll end my thought today. It is so scary of what might happen. AGI, then sentience, then the singularity, or any part of it. There are so many uncertainties. That part of me was like, they always say in TSMC they have some switches to blow the place up if Taiwan attacks. Who knows if that's true or not, but at least that's what I've been told hundreds of times.
Wait, some switches to blow way up?
TSMC, which basically provides all the semiconductors in the damn world. If that company went down, it sets the world back 10 years.
Wow.
And part of me wants someone to pull the switch just to slow this whole thing down. It's scary. I mean, it's also thrilling, right? And so we'll have to ride this wave. But it's both scary and thrilling. Because you're right. Why do we want a world where the computers are smarter than us? And
right.
That said, if your wife has cancer, it would be awfully nice to have the AI cure her cancer real quick.
Yeah.
Damn. A lot of pros and cons.
On that optimistic note, peace out.
Why do we just peace out like that, though?
Because we're minute 7:31 seconds.
You know what?
Can we just edit
You should
this
leave
out,
that in.